A warm welcome to everyone joining us for our live coverage of the Starlink 6-94 mission. You are looking live at a Falcon 9 rocket standing on Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. SpaceX is counting down to the launch of 29 Starlink satellites. Liftoff is scheduled for 7:12 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 0012 UTC for our viewers around the world. I'm Stephen Young, and I'll be providing commentary tonight. Will Robinson-Smith is on vacation. Our ace videographer, Adam Bernstein, is running our cameras this evening. I'm performing double duty tonight. In addition to doing commentary, I'm also running the technical aspects of tonight's broadcast. So please bear with me as I will be doing a lot of multitasking this evening. I'd like to give a big thank you to Jeff Hansen, who's moderating our chat tonight, and Cumulus Granatus, who's also in the chat offering assistance by answering questions. So if you have any questions about tonight's mission, feel free to drop it into the chat. Tonight's launch will be the 148th Falcon 9 mission of the year. It will also be the 99th launch from the Space Coast this year, coming up on a big milestone, which we're likely to hit towards the end of this week, with 100 launches from the Cape. We'll have support this evening tracking the launch with our friends Chuck and Jen Briggs of C&J Images and Pete Costens at Max Q Productions. Here's a view from Chuck's camera on Merritt Island showing the Falcon 9. The lights you're seeing are vehicles crossing the NASA Causeway that traverses the Indian River Lagoon, the Banana River. Spaceflight Now is powered by our viewers and members. You can help us out by hitting the like button, clicking subscribe, and the notifications bell. If you do that, you'll always know when we're going live for a launch. If you'd like to do more to help improve and expand our coverage of the space program, we would very much appreciate it if you would consider making a donation through YouTube's Super Chat feature, or by becoming a member of our YouTube channel. Membership grants you access to our special members-only videos, as well as discounts on our online shop, shop.spaceflightnow.com. A huge thank you to everyone who has made a contribution and helped fund our coverage. We can't do this without your support. We're coming up on T-minus 53 minutes and counting. SpaceX is running its countdown from the Launch Control Center, which is housed inside its Hangar X facility, located about 5.5 miles to the west of the launch pad. We're about 10 minutes or so from the point where the launch director will perform their go, no-go poll for the start of propellant load. It's a beautiful evening to go fly a rocket from Cape Canaveral. We've got mostly clear skies. As you can see from this Goes East satellite imagery, which, as you can see, is recording a sequence over sunset this evening. The 45th Weather Squadron, which is based at Cape Canaveral, yesterday issued a forecast calling for 95% chance of acceptable conditions for liftoff. The only concern that they put in their forecast is for cumulus clouds, possibility that some low-level clouds and perhaps a shower might make its way into the area. But everything appears from the layman's point of view that it's looking like a very good night for a launch. Should the need arise and SpaceX need to push back the launch to tomorrow night, the chances of a weather rule violation actually drop. So a greater than 95% chance of acceptable conditions should we see a delay until tomorrow. But right now, everything looks on track for a liftoff at 7:12 p.m. T-minus 46 minutes and counting. Let's take a look at the countdown timeline for today's Starlink mission. Coming up, the SpaceX launch director will be conducting their go-no-go poll in the Launch Control Center at the Hangar X facility. They should give the confirmation that all is clear for launch at around the T-minus 38-minute mark, but sometimes that comes a little earlier. Unfortunately, we won't hear that because SpaceX doesn't provide mission audio for these missions any longer. If a go is given, propellant load will start at the T-minus 35-minute mark. That process begins with the loading of kerosene on the first and second stages, along with liquid oxygen for the first stage. With 30 minutes left on the clock, the next major event is the start of cryogenic helium loading. The helium is pumped aboard carbon fiber pressure vessels located inside the rocket's liquid oxygen tanks. That helium plays an important role during launch. It pressurizes the rocket's tanks as the propellants are consumed. This keeps liquid oxygen and kerosene flowing into the Merlin engines. The helium load starts with the first stage and continues with the second stage 4 minutes later. Loading of kerosene aboard the second stage should wrap up at around the 23-minute mark. Loading of kerosene into the first stage's much larger tank will continue for about another 15 minutes or so. The next major event is the start of the chill down of the strongback. The strongback is the large truss-like structure that sits up alongside the rocket. You can just about make it out in our views between the crew tower and the rocket. This serves as the conduit for propellant lines, air conditioning, and power for both the rocket's second stage and payload fairing. The chill down process becomes obvious in the form of the so-called big vent. A large cloud of vapor will be seen as the liquid oxygen lines are cooled before the next major milestone in the countdown. That comes at T-minus 16 minutes when it's the turn of liquid oxygen to start flowing through those strongback lines into the second stage. At T-minus 7 minutes, the chill down of the 9 Merlin first stage engines will get underway. This involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps. This will protect those engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes prior to launch, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. And then at T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strongback begin retracting from the Falcon 9 rocket. It will recline to an angle of about 1.5 degrees, leaning back ever so slightly from the Falcon 9. It will stay there until the moment of liftoff, when the strongback will throw back in a more rapid fashion, which clears the way for the climb of the Falcon 9 off the launch pad. About 3 minutes before liftoff, the first stage liquid oxygen tank should be full. Then around 2 minutes before launch, liquid oxygen loading should be complete on the second stage. At this point in the countdown, the Falcon 9 will be fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellants. In the final 60 seconds of the countdown, control will be handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers, which are located in the second stage of the vehicle. The propellant tanks will be brought up to flight pressure, and the SpaceX launch director will give their final go for liftoff if everything is looking good. The engine ignition command will be issued at T-minus 3 seconds. If all 9 Merlin 1D engines ignite and are deemed to be healthy, the flight computer will command hold-down clamps to release the Falcon 9, and we will see the liftoff of the Falcon 9, which tonight is targeted for 7:12 and 20 seconds. It was another busy day here at the Cape. We're going to take a look in another direction right now, and towards the port where Chuck Briggs has his camera pointed. And you can see the Blue Origin New Glenn first stage booster, never tell me the odds, sitting at the port, having returned following its mission last week. Blue Origin becoming only the second company to successfully recover an orbital class first stage rocket. Thanks to Chuck Briggs for this view. Looks like the crane has been attached to that first stage. It will be moved back to Blue's facility at the Kennedy Space Center later this week. We've reached that point in the countdown where the launch director should be complete with their poll and will have given a go or no-go for the start of propellant load, which is due to get underway, if all is running according to plan, in about 3 minutes. Tonight's booster is tail number 1085. Will be making its 12th flight. Once we get confirmation of the start of propellant load, we'll take a look at the history of this particular booster, which is particularly interesting. Certainly a very interesting start for this rocket, but we'll come to that once we know that the fueling operation is underway. Well, if everything is on track for this evening's launch, the propellant load sequence should have got underway. As we talked about earlier, that begins with the loading of kerosene, a rocket-grade kerosene known as RP1 on the first and second stages, along with densified liquid oxygen on the first stage. Inside the Launch Control Center, the ground controllers there have a very nice display that shows them graphically the percentage full levels in the various propellant tanks, the 4 propellant tanks aboard the Falcon 9, 2 on the first stage and 2 on the second stage. We have to make do with a bit of a hack here by just watching the frost line form on the vehicle. We may actually be starting to see a little bit of that. It's a little hard to tell with the heat distortion. But that frost line will gradually climb up the side of the first stage and will serve as a make-do fuel gauge for those of us watching the rocket from afar. I don't know if you can make out the SpaceX logo, a little obscured by the 11 earlier flights of this rocket, but the area we're looking at is right at the bottom of that logo, and I think we are starting to see that frost band expand and some vapor coming off. This isn't actually the propellant itself. As the super chilled densified liquid oxygen flows into the tank, it chills down the fuselage of the first stage. And when the humid Florida air comes into contact with that cold metal, some of the moisture in the air is condensed out and forms these clouds of vapors and wisps that swirl around the base of the rocket as the fueling process gets underway. And I think we're definitely seeing that process starting now as that frost and vapor band begins to expand. For those of you asking about the trajectory for this particular Falcon 9, it will pitch to the southeast once it lifts off from pad 40 at Cape Canaveral. It's heading on a southeasterly trajectory and will eventually pass to the east of the Bahamas. That's where the drone ship, a shortfall of Gravitas, is stationed, which will recover the booster. So, as promised, let's take a look at the history of this particular booster, Booster 1085 in the SpaceX fleet. It's making its 12th flight tonight. It has an interesting history. On its debut flight, it was supposed to travel to the International Space Station with the Crew 9 astronauts. But those plans changed because during the booster's transport from SpaceX's McGregor test facility to the Cape, it suffered some water intrusion into its liquid oxygen tank. So NASA and SpaceX agreed to take it out for a spin on a Starlink mission before flying crew on the rocket. SpaceX also performed a static fire prior to that debut mission, which launched 22 Starlink V2 mini satellites into orbit. With a good flight behind it, on the 20th of August, 2024, 1085 was cleared to launch Crew 9, which was also the first crewed flight from Pad 40, following the addition of a crew access tower to that pad. On its next flight, 1085 was back on the Starlink delivery run, launching another 23 satellites for the constellation. It then launched a GPS-3 satellite, which was sort of under the cloak of secrecy initially, as it was a demonstration mission for a U.S. Space Force Rapid Response Trailblazer program. And the flight was designated RRT-1 prior to the launch, and the fact it was a GPS satellite wasn't initially disclosed. Another interesting mission for this vehicle came a month later in January 2025, when it carried two moon-bound missions. Firefly's Blue Ghost 1, which successfully landed on the lunar surface, and the privately funded Hakuto R2 from Japan-based iSpace, which unfortunately did not make it to the surface safely. Then in April, 1085 was back launching crew again with the commercial Fram-2 mission, which carried 4 private astronauts into a polar orbit. It was the first time a crewed mission had gone into orbit around the poles. Next up, back on Starlink duties once more with the deployment of another 28 satellites on the Starlink 6-93 mission. Then it was time for a little commercial work, launching the Sirius XM SXM-10 satellite. That was followed by the MTG S1 Sentinel-4A mission for Europe's Meteosat. It was back to Starlink duties for its next 2 missions, Starlink 10-20 and Starlink 10-27 on its most recent flight back in September. T-minus 25 minutes and counting. At this point, the loading of cryogenic helium is underway on both the first and second stages. That helium's used to pressurize the engines for flight. Also, we should have seen the wrap-up of the loading of kerosene on the second stage. That's the smallest propellant tank on the vehicle, so fills up pretty quickly. There are 29 Starlink V2 mini satellites on this particular mission. They will be deployed from the top of the second stage of the rocket, about an hour and 5 minutes into flight. Unfortunately, SpaceX no longer covers Starlink missions through the deployment of the satellites, but they do occasionally post some video of what that looks like. So we can take a look at a replay of that deployment sequence on a previous mission. The Starlink satellites are flat packed, one on top of each other. They're not actually connected in any way. They just sit on top of each other, and as they're deployed, they will gently drift apart from each other. You get a great look at the second stage of the rocket and the reflection, and also the retention arms closing and latching into place, perhaps actually more velcroing into place onto the side of the second stage. Fantastic video. That's definitely an area that SpaceX excels in. Its onboard cameras, probably the best in the business. Coming up on the start of the chill down sequence, the big vent. You can see that getting underway clearly in the view from Merritt Island from Chuck Briggs. This is the process that cools down the propellant lines that run from the liquid oxygen storage tanks to the second stage of the Falcon 9. That's to ensure those lines are at the correct temperature prior to the start of propellant load. Without this chill down process, there would be a risk that bubbles and gas can form inside the fuel lines that run to the second stage, which would not be a good situation for the fueling process. You want to keep that propellant cold all the way through to the propellant tank. While this chill down process continues, taking a quick look at the chat, a big thank you to Virginia Pruitt for a $10 super chat. And a big thank you also to Bill in Lauderdale, who has also made a super chat of $5. And thanks the mods for all they do. And I see that Jeff Hansen's also been joined by Rick Donna moderating the chat tonight. So a big thank you to both of them for keeping the chat civil. This chill down process will be wrapping up soon. We'll soon see the flow of vapor taper off from the strong back vent valve. I think we're starting to see that now. So with that process nearing completion, we will be approaching the start of the liquid oxygen load on the second stage. T-minus 15 minutes and counting. Liquid oxygen should now be flowing into both the first and second stages, along with kerosene into the first stage. We're less than 15 minutes from the launch of this Falcon 9 rocket. T-minus 12 minutes and counting. With less than 10 minutes left on the countdown, let's take a look at the Falcon 9 rocket that's standing at Launch Complex 40. It's 70 meters or 229 feet tall and has a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. The bottom 2/3 of the rocket is the first stage. Today's first stage booster has flown 11 times before and has the tail number 1085 in the SpaceX fleet. At the base of the first stage are the 9 Merlin engines, which burn rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen to produce 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Around the engine compartment are the black carbon fiber landing legs that will be used to land the first stage on the drone ship. Moving up the rocket, we come to the interstage. This is a composite structure consisting of aluminum honeycomb core surrounded by carbon fiber. In the inset image, you can also see the deployable hypersonic grid fins that provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it re-enters the atmosphere. At the top of the interstage are 3 mechanical latches that attach it to the second stage. At first stage main engine cutoff, high-pressure helium is used to release those latches, and 4 pneumatic pushes ensure there's a clean separation. The second stage nozzle is safely housed inside the interstage adapter until stage separation. This stage is powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine, or MVAC. It's equipped with a large nozzle that is optimized for burns in vacuum. It will be fired twice on today's flight to place the 29 Starlink satellites into their intended orbit. It will also be used for a deorbit burn, which will eliminate the risk of creating any orbital debris. At the very top of the rocket is the payload fairing containing the 29 Starlink satellites. The 2 halves of the payload fairing will be recovered a little further downrange from where the first stage will land on the drone ship. They will gently splash down under parachutes. The recovery ship Doug will fish the fairing halves out of the water and return them to Cape Canaveral for refurbishment. This point in the countdown, the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines should have taken place or got underway. And we should be wrapping up the loading of kerosene aboard the first stage of the rocket. We'll soon be getting pad views and audio from SpaceX's launch control. The next step in the countdown will be to pressurize the tanks for the retraction of the strong back structure. The structure does support the rocket, and by pressurizing the tanks, it gives it a little more strength.
Tanks are pressurizing for strong back retract.
And we did get that call that the tanks are pressurizing.
Strong back retract automation has started.
The start of the strong back retract is soon to get underway. Seeing those clamp arms open on the second stage of the rocket. You can see that strong back structure starting to move away from the vehicle. Coming up on the T-minus 3 minute mark, the rocket's autonomous destruct system will be armed shortly, and liquid oxygen topping will be terminated soon.
Stage 1, LOX load complete.
There we hear the call for the completion of loading of oxygen on the first stage. Second stage, liquid oxygen continues to flow as they top up those tanks.
Stage 2, LOX load complete.
"90 seconds to launch.
Gas launch closeouts.
The Falcon 9's fully fueled and ready to go. We're waiting for the final calls from the launch team.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
We have the call that the onboard computers are in control.
Chief Engineer in consultation with the launch director, go for launch.
And an odd call there from the chief engineer. T-minus 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
Ten seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 carrying 29 Starlink satellites. The Falcon 9 has cleared the tower.
Power and telemetry nominal. Vehicle is supersonic. Max Q.
Now 90 seconds
backfill
into
is
flight.
started. Main
Coming
engine
up
cutoff.
on separation.
Stage separation confirmed.
There we see separation of the two stages. See the lights of Florida behind
back
the
startup.
second stage engine. Second stage ignition. You can see that from our cameras on the ground and also from the onboard cameras on the right-hand side of your screen. The top right, we're seeing the deployment of those titanium grid fins that will help steer the Falcon 9. Coming up on payload fairing deployment.
Confirmed.
See that in real time. And there we see it in the SpaceX feed. Getting some plume effects in our tracking camera and Adam Bernstein's camera at the Cape. This view of the second stage coming from Peak Carstens. You can see the first stage is continuing on its arc towards the drone ship, a shortfall of gravitas. It's currently at 112 kilometers. Gradually reaching the peak, 113 now. Gradually reaching the peak of that arc before it starts to fall back into the atmosphere as gravity once more takes hold. Looks like it has begun its descent. We can tell that by the speed gradually starting to pick up as it falls back to Earth. The next important milestone for the first stage will be the entry burn. That's a critical firing using first 1 and then 3 of its Merlin engines to slow its descent so that it doesn't burn up in the atmosphere as it plunges back to Earth. We've also got about 3 minutes and 20 seconds left in the second stage burn. That has now accelerated the Starlink satellites to over 12,000 kilometers an hour. That stage is currently at an altitude of 150 kilometers. We're still seeing that stage live in Pete Costin's tracking camera.
Stage 1 FTS has safed.
Be coming up on that entry burn. See if our team can get us some views of that.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
Looks like Pete has it. There's the Falcon 9 fighting fire with fire by creating essentially a heat shield from its shockwave from those engines, and also slowing down the rocket, slamming on the brakes so that it survives that re-entry process.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
That's probably the last we'll see of either of the stages at this point, with
Stage 2 FTS has safed.
with the vehicles going over the horizon from our viewpoint here at the Kennedy Space Center in the Space Coast area. We're now watching SpaceX's live feed here with the first stage on the left of your screen and the second stage showing the red-hot Merlin vacuum engine on the right side. The Falcon 9 is approaching the transonic region.
Stage 1 transonic.
Stage 2 terminal guidance.
Stage 1 landing burn.
That landing burn underway, the single Merlin engine.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy.
And touchdown for Booster
Stage 1 landing
1085,
confirmed.
completing its 12th mission. Got a little bit longer left in the second stage burn.
I'm back shut down.
And there we have confirmation that it has completed its burn.
Nominal orbit insertion.
And we heard the call from SpaceX's control team that it was a nominal orbit insertion, meaning the Falcon 9 second stage has reached the correct parking orbit. It's about a 45-minute coast in this parking orbit before a short 2-second burn of that Merlin vacuum engine to circularize the orbit. That burn comes a little bit before the 54-minute mark in the flight and will be followed by separation of the Starlink satellites about an hour and 5 minutes into the mission. In a moment, we'll take a look at our mission stats and see how this mission stacks up by the numbers. But let's take a quick look at the chat. We've had some activity from our wonderful viewers tonight. The Tank 997 with a $10 super chat saying they loved the channel. Thank you very much for that. We really appreciate it. Alicia Delegati giving a gift of 5 memberships. Thank you so much. If you received one of those memberships, be sure to thank Alicia. A $2 super chat from K2 Hat, thanking us from the coverage from Miko, Florida. And Chuck Close coming in with a $25 super chat. Thank you all so much for your support. It's really appreciated. And all of the super chats that we get plowed back into our coverage. So we'll continue to learn and improve and bring you the best video and audio of the space program. So let's take a look and see how the stats now line up following this so far successful launch of the Falcon 9. Still a little way to go before it can be classed as a total success with that additional burn required by the second stage and the deployment of the satellites. But as it currently looks, this is how our stats are looking tonight. So this was the 12th flight of Falcon 9 Booster 1085, which entered service just last year. It was the 565th Falcon 9 launch to date. The 148th Falcon 9 of the year. The 501st reflight of a previously flown Falcon 9 booster. This stat gives us a good idea of the company's launch cadence. It's the number of launches that have taken place in the last 365 days. It's a better gauge of where SpaceX stands in its effort to reach 170 launches in the year. It has hit 170 launches in a 365-day period. That came a week or so ago. But it has lost a little ground, and that statistic now currently stands at 167. But even if they don't get back up to 170, still a pretty impressive achievement for a single year for a single launch vehicle variant. This was the 293rd SpaceX orbital launch from Pad 40 and the 348th overall launch from that pad. Let's take a look at the bar chart and see where we stand there as far as the number of launches by calendar year. As you can see, SpaceX has soared past the total for 2024, which was the previous record for any launch company. And you can really see the growth in the Falcon 9 flight rate just over the last 4 years or so. Taking a look at the industry stats for this year only, big number coming up later this week, as tonight's launch was the 99th orbital flight from Florida's Space Coast. Already an all-time record, but it will hit that symbolic 100th launch later this week if everything stays on track. It was the 157th orbital launch from US soil and the 171st orbital launch from a US rocket company, including the flights of the Electron rocket by Rocket Lab from New Zealand. Rocket Lab being a US registered company. It was the 268th orbital launch attempt globally. And of those, there have been 6 orbital launch failures. One more bar chart to look at. Here's that Cape Canaveral statistic. Showing us tantalizingly close to the 100 launches in a year mark. That's obviously including 2 flights by Blue Origin's New Glenn and some Atlas and Vulcan flights by United Launch Alliance. So returning to the chat, just want to thank Christopher Lemke. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Chris. And we appreciate your support tonight. Also, a big thank you to our team covering this launch. Be sure to follow them on social media. Adam Bernstein was operating the tracking camera at the press site and set up a lot of our other static cameras for this launch. Michael Kane was out in the field, also getting some still photography tonight. So stay tuned to our social media at Spaceflight Now, and we'll post those photos as soon as we have them. And John and Will have the evening off, but be sure to follow them too. Also, a big thank you to our tracking team of Pete Carstens of MaxQ Productions and Chuck and Jen Briggs of C&J Images for helping to bring us those fantastic views of tonight's liftoff by the Falcon 9. So with that, I'll wish you a very good night, and we'll see you for the next launch, the Transporter 15 mission, which is coming up on Thursday. Until then, have a wonderful evening. Goodbye.